Hello, welcome to the Communication 4603 Creating Social Media Presence and Cultural Movements Asynchronous Interview number 5. This is Dr. Garrett Castleberry, Program Director for Communication, Media, and Ethics at Mid-America Christian University. We have been working all course long on strengthening our interviewing skills, not only the skills of interviewing itself, but the many qualitative tools and strategies that we perform along the way to get there. And so one of the takeaways we can recognize in the combination of studying communication as well as media studies and social media is that everything we see coming before us through a screen is but a frame, right? A metaphor we often use in this course. And it's important to recognize all of the work that always goes into a production in advance. So hopefully our students have been enjoying that process of acquiring and strengthening those interviewing skills in a variety of situations for present and potential future uses. We are joined today for our final interview with Jameson Reynolds, worship pastor up the road in Tulsa. And Jameson is going to respond to your interview questions. And as always, we have a combination of written questions submitted in advance, shared with our speaker, as well as some video questions for those of you able to meet our bridge schedule in week 5. All right. And so, Jameson, welcome. And just to kind of warm us up, do you want to catch us up with the official title or the main roles you currently occupy in your present job?
Sure. Well, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me, Dr. Castleberry. It's fun calling you that, knowing I knew you when we were both just undergrads, but you kept going. And so
it's fun hearing it because so few people say it.
Well, I'll be sure and say it. Yeah. So my official title is I am the worship pastor for the church at South Tulsa. And that sounds like a really ambiguous organization, but it's a part of churches from the church at churches, which originally started the church at Battle Creek and Broken Arrow. And that church in the past several years has planted several churches around the Tulsa area, starting with the church at Midtown, the church at downtown Tulsa, the church at South Tulsa, the church in Owasso, and the church at Jinx most recently. So we say that we're one church that meets in multiple locations, and we actually have a campus in Egypt. Our senior pastor is Egyptian, and so my campus pastor is actually heading to Egypt today. So
this is fantastic because one of the important lessons we try to recognize in our communication, media, and ethics degree at MACU is the power of digital media today, and how it's not only that thing that we use our spare time, our leisure time, maybe even some work time, driving time to consume, part-time doctor's office time, but also it's becoming a daily part of our roles, a prerequisite, and so many organizations are looking to promote and communicate through digital channels. We have a number of student questions, and to preface, they relate to your series of previous as well as present work experience. All right. And so we may bounce around a little, and that's okay, but we're looking forward to tackling some of those questions. Do you have questions queued up on your end as well, or do you want me to replay audio from them on my end?
I went ahead and wrote them down, and so I've kind of got the notes and their names, and so
okay, excellent.
I can hit them in the order that you sent them to me, and feel free to cut me off or whatever at any point we need to. Erin, I know she had a couple questions. The first question she led with was a really good question. She had asked if there was ever a time in any of my work experiences where I felt inadequately prepared, and how did I deal with that? and there's a couple that really stood out to my mind. The first one that really jumped to my mind was back when I was working in the studio, and we worked with a variety of different kind of artists and different kind of genres. But my main wheelhouse was like, okay, what is this acoustic pop, guitar-driven music? And working with artists like that, I could hit that out of the park every day. But I had a group coming in that was primarily, it was a black gospel style music that was very piano driven, very vocal driven, with multiple vocal parts and layers. And they were going to spend a week with me in the studio. And so I was just like, man, this is not in my wheelhouse at all. And so I had some time leading into them coming up. And so I spent a week just listening to that style of music. And, you kind of learn working in the studio. Every genre has their little tricks and their little things they do and their little studio sizzle deals to make things sound like they do. And I just didn't know those tricks yet. I didn't have those tools in my toolkit yet. And so I kind of had to build the toolkit up. And so that was part of it, just being prepared before they came in. And then when they were there, honestly, the biggest thing was just establishing some ethos and connecting with them interpersonally and gaining that trust of, hey, like I come from, and they knew it. They're like, all right, this dude, he doesn't play a lot of the music we do. He doesn't look like we do, but I gain their trust and let them know, hey, we're going to connect. And as far as anything on the technical end, I can make it happen, and we're going to learn from each other. And I learned a lot that week, and it made me better as a musician, but definitely felt pretty inadequate before. But it'd be kind of one of those things. I'd see one of their keyboard player making these crazy runs, and I would just be blown away by what he was playing. And then after 3 or 4 songs, I was like, okay, he's only playing in like 2 different keys. He's transposing his piano every time. I was like, that's like what an acoustic guitar player putting a capo on. Like, okay, like that was cool, but a little, look behind the veil as well, look like a peek behind the curtain. And then another time would probably be about 2 years ago, right as I was transitioning from my previous church, the church I helped plant, into my current church, the church at South Tulsa. I started 2 weeks before Easter, and it was 2 weeks after the campus launched. So, I mean, just in church world, Easter and Christmas is like, those are your 2 Super Bowls, the Super Bowl and the World Series. And it was, a brand new team of volunteers, musicians, technical volunteers that I didn't know, that I had to build a relationship with. And honestly, it was a lot of content music-wise, about half of it that I wasn't familiar with. And so it was one of those things where I was just like, okay, I know I can do this, but these next 2 weeks, they're just going to be really tough, and I'm going to have to practice. And the thing in music, especially, and the thing in leading worship, and it translates over to a lot of areas of life. Like if you're prepared, even if it's an area of strength and it's an area of your talent, to get to that level, there's a certain level of preparedness that needs to take place. And to maintain that level, you have to keep preparing like that. And so it was just like, I'm just gonna have to lock in. And the more I know these songs, the more I'm prepared about what I'm gonna say in between the songs, the more comfortable I'll be on stage, and the less I'll be jumbling around and falling all over myself and appearing unprepared, or appearing, like I'm not confident, or I'm not believing what I'm actually saying. So.
Mm-hmm. This, you, in telling the first part of your story just now, it got me thinking about a connection to one of the several themes we've talked about and discussed from one of our main course texts, Scott Goodson's Uprising. And Goodson writes a lot about passion, and the need for passion, not only from the producer of an idea in order for it to spark a cultural movement, our ultimate goal for many, but also we want to enliven that audience to be passionate, or that passionate or impassioned, or that consumer to be impassioned, so that they carry that message. And work in ministry is very similar. You're looking to sort of represent and lead groups of people. But to bring it back to your experience as a music producer, you mentioned even when you felt unprepared, you recognized the importance of connecting with clients. Mm-hmm. And that struck me on two levels, and maybe you could speak to this a little bit more, reinforce it or negate it. The first would be that to connect well with clients, you need strong communication skills, one, and two, you need to have a certain ability to network with people. And can you sort of confirm or deny that, or expound on that based on real world experience, either in recording industry or in ministry?
Yeah, no, that it's absolutely key. You could have a ton of ability and skill and resources, but if you're not able to communicate and let people know what you know, and let people know what you're going to do, or let people know the ability that you have, if you struggle with communicating, there's going to be probably some mistrust there, or the trust wouldn't be where it could be, maybe not mistrust. So yeah, it's definitely like that. It was always that way in the studio. Like you would get on the phone with a client, and I felt like people were naturally a little tentative. And so the first couple conversations were just putting them at ease. Like, hey, this is what our studio uses. These are the kind of mics we use, software we use, what the facilities look like. And yeah, that may look different than what you're used to using, but it's one of those things. If it were a car, I know how to drive this car, and I drive this car every day, and I can drive it pretty well. Now, just because you drive this other car, I may not have that experience with that, but if you'll trust me to hop in this car with me, we're going to go to the place you want to go. So that was definitely for that. Second part of the question again, remind me.
Networking.
Yes.
Need for networking.
Man, it's huge. Especially, I'm reminded as far as networking and communication, like that's the way you make it in the world. Like, there's this misconception. You get out of college, that's what you do. You go network with people. Like, or if I'm in my, I'm 34 right now, and something were to happen, and I wouldn't be at my job tomorrow, the first thing I would do wouldn't be to go on monster.com or go on LinkedIn and start, posting resumes. Like, I would get on the phone and I would call every single person that I know that's in the field that I want to do, and say, hey, this is what the experience I have. This is what I'm looking for. I'm willing to do X, Y, and Z. What do you know about? What have you heard about? How can, is there anything you can help me with? Is there any way I can help you? And, I would send out an email to every person I knew in whatever industry I was in. I would send a Facebook message. I would exhaust every form of communication trying to find that network. And ultimately, that's where I ended up where I'm at now. I got a Facebook message from one of our former leaders at my church. She worked with a guy I went to college with, who also is a worship pastor. I connected with him on Facebook. I had seen him at our local Starbucks, and we got to talking, and I just kind of told him where I was at, and he happened to be a connection between us two. So it wasn't, him directly, it was an indirect way, but that was, networking is huge, and your ability to communicate is going to help your ability to network well.
I think it's a great opportunity, and this is just a personal plug, but I feel like you're reinforcing this here. There is an outside stigma that people often attach to the organizational method of conferencing and these kinds of like regional or national meetings. However, that said, for those that take advantage of that or invest in it, because they can sometimes require that financial investment. It's not just a time investment, a financial investment. The people you can cultivate with, the relationships you could start down the road with, can lead to some fruit at some point.
Definitely.
Let's jump questions here. We can come back, or if Aaron's follow-up question had an immediate tie, feel free to do that. But let's hear from a different student.
Sure. Let's see. Okay. Chris had asked a question, or what are some daily struggles that I have, and how does communication help with those struggles? And I thought this one, it took me a minute to kind of figure out where I could go with this, but once I got there, it was super easy. So currently, like I said, our church is a campus of a central organization. So that can make things kind of what's the word I'm looking for? They can make things, communication can be difficult. And when I'm explaining it to outsiders, it takes a minute. Once you're in the organization, you kind of get it. So for an example, I work at a campus, and I have a direct line, a direct supervisor, and that is my campus pastor. And I have also a dotted line for our lead worship pastor. He is at our central campus. So he leads all of the worship pastors, and I report to him as a dotted line. And we are on a team in the sense that all the worship pastors, we meet together regularly, and we all do the same kind of thing, but we're all at a different campus. And then we have our campus organization, where I have our campus pastor that I report directly to, but we have a campus team, elementary pastor, preschool director, youth pastor, etc. And so there are times where, information is disseminated, whether it be from the top down to campus pastors to us, and then I'm communicating that stuff to other worship pastors, or I'm in a meeting and I'm at the central location and I hear something and the worship pastors hear it first, and then we're supposed to take it back to the campuses and communicate that back up to our campus pastors, which also goes back down. So clear communication, having records of that communication, and flexibility is something that, you have to be, I have to deal with daily. And it was a lot different than when I was working at a single church, a single organization. Stuff could be a lot more streamlined, and stuff could get done a lot quicker. But what's different now is, about 500 to 600 people that attend our campus every Sunday. But our campus has the leverage and the ability of a church of 5,000 people. And so stuff might take a little bit longer, but really big things can happen quickly, and a lot more resources are available. But communication, man, is key every day. And there are times when I have to lead up communication wise, and at times where I have to lead laterally communication wise. And there are times when, if you are a good communicator, you will be sought out and you will be used, because people recognize how this person helps us get the right information across our organization in a really good way. And so it's good for you.
I love this concept of your experience with multi-campus work, and we can gain so much from that. It reminds me, even when you mentioned we may service 500 people in person, but we're equipped for 5,000. This is not unlike the MACU experience in some ways. But while talking about your worship experience, a question from Stephanie came to mind. Stephanie had a question, and in relating to your area of expertise, the question reads, coming from a musical background myself, I know that there are many personalities and egos that have to be worked with. How do you approach this? How do you approach and attempt to work in quote unquote harmony with so many opinion leaders, I guess?
Sure. So there's a couple of things that we do. I think the biggest thing is, if you can create and establish and maintain a culture where people will check their egos at the door, where people are bought into the team, and where people are doing things for the good of the team. When new people enter in, they see that environment and they see that culture, and it can kind of be a self-filtering device where if they might come with a lot of ego or a lot of me kind of attitude, like it will kind of take care of themselves, and people will see this is the expectation and this is what we're looking for. And like I said, you have to create the culture and you have to maintain and sustain that. And we do that a couple ways. We do that just weekly with our rehearsals. You know, we have a rehearsal every single week, but every time after the rehearsal, we have a huddle time where we'll just talk and just have a little bit of time catching up. Hey, is there anything that's going on in your life that we can pray for you with? Is there anything we can celebrate? We do that weekly, so it's not just about the music. It's about the team aspect. And you know, throughout the year, we will have at our campus, we'll have get-togethers where we just come and have dinner and hang out without playing music, without doing anything. On a total central level, we'll have a thing called, we have team nights where we will gather all campus worship teams together at our central location, and we'll have dinner. We will, you know, we might have a couple breakout sessions, or we might have some topics and things we'll be speaking about, or some specific training sessions. And then our organization is just really good. You know, the church organization is really good at throughout the year. We have multiple volunteer training events where, again, maintain and establish culture. To keep things, because it's like, you know, an organization's like a ship. You know, it can take a while for things to get off course, but just a little bit of slowly being off course over, you know, the period of time, you can be way off course. And so it's just driving that ship and keeping it pointed in the right direction daily and weekly. So
talking about the various tasks that someone in contemporary ministry would have, you have, in addition to worship pastor experience producing a lot of media. So we're not talking about music producer specifically. We're talking about you've had a hand in some church plant organizational activities that includes creating social media campaigns or creating, you know, short media production packages, right, to help create brand awareness for the church plant. And I want to kind of pinball over to that line of thinking and experience. And Stephanie had also asked in regards to various social media campaigns, or we can think of them as those media productions that you have created. What inspires your creativity? Or, you know, what does that process look like? Where do you draw inspiration? Or is it just solely based off the needs of the church? You work alone? How does that, how have your experiences been there?
Yeah. So, I'm not super tied into social media in my current role, unless it's kind of campus specific. We have somebody at the central location that does drive social media for all the campuses. But if there is kind of anything that we do, our kind of organic stuff tends to get more engagement. But at my last church, I was the worship and media pastor. So whether it was creating video packages, design our website, creating graphics for digital and print media, social media, all that kind of stuff, that was a massive part of my job. And as far as inspiration, I mean, a couple of different ways. The first thing is I tried to, you know, stand on the shoulder of giants. Like who is out here? What church is just killing it in social media? And what are they doing? And not just what does it look like, but what's the why behind why they're doing? Why did they post it like that? Like, what are they getting at? Or what is a video, like what story were they trying to tell in this video? Why did it look like this? And so I would like, who's doing great and what can I take from them? And then just, I think you'd be remiss if you don't find inspiration just from everything you encounter all the time. Like this is a, for example, I'm part of our central creative team where all of our campuses we have a creative team that meets every single week, and we'll discuss things like sermon bumpers, which is like the 15 to 30-second video that plays right before our pastor comes out. He's live stream, and so this video kind of allows all the campuses to sync up, or, you know, all kinds of stuff. We create content constantly. And we had a series in, I think, January, and it was called Hearing the Voice of God. And so we were like, okay, what is a creative way we can talk about, or like show like what hearing something, and like what are the ways we hear things? Okay, we hear things through headphones, we hear things through the radio, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, just it's a safe space where we talk, and we're like, okay, we're not afraid to throw out some big idea. And somebody was like, hey, has anyone ever seen the Netflix show Mindhunter? Like, the credits for that are awesome. And so we're like, how can we take that, and how can we make something that looks like that? And so that's exactly what we did. Like, found a cool Netflix bumper that's their intro credits, and we created something, and we were all just floored about how it turned out, because it wasn't just a direct steal. Somebody wasn't like, oh yeah, that's Mindhunter. It was, once we told them, like, oh yeah, that makes sense, but it made sense in the context you were using it. You saw something cool and you used it in your application, and then, you know, made it your own.
I am trying to remember if we had a specific question about this. I know students asked our previous interviewee last week, but you have mentioned now creating media as well as producing music, and in two different contexts, one in a sort of industry producing setting, another in a church organization or church plant situation. And so the question of software, tools, digital tools, and training comes to mind. Do you have any recommendations, or can you talk about the types of software you use, or other digital tools, or any training, what training you received, perhaps even college training if there was any?
Sure. Yeah, this is a big one. Definitely when you're in the creative world, as far as any kind of graphic design or video editing or any of that kind of stuff, most everything that I did was all through the Adobe Creative Suite, whether it was Premiere Pro or Photoshop or you know, InDesign, After Effects, all that. It was kind of the standard as far as what churches were doing, and there are a lot of websites that you can go to, like Video Hive, all that kind of stuff, that have templates that you can use. It's kind of like, hey, maybe you have a project and this is a starting place, and you can use this little template that we've created and kind of make it your own. But Premiere Pro, definitely for video. I know Apple has Final Cut, and I used to use the older Final Cut version. I think it's Final Cut 7, but for the past 4 or 5 years, everything's just kind of been Premiere Pro. On the audio end, basically there are two main platforms that kind of everyone uses and everybody likes to argue about. The kind of the industry standard is Pro Tools, DigiDesign stuff, and then Apple's Logic Pro. And you kind of either fall in one camp or the other. I've been using Logic Pro for 10 years or so, and so it's kind of, I use that car illustration. I've never driven the Pro Tools car. I've been driving this Logic Pro car for a long time. I can work really quick and really efficiently, and I can do my best work on it. Not saying that, you know, Pro Tools isn't better. It's not what I use. For ministry stuff, and especially for what I use now in the live worship setting, Ableton Live is incredible. It allows us to use tracks as we play. We can play with a click track. We can play with a guide. It's something, I have Ableton open every single day of the work week. We use it on Sunday mornings, every single Sunday morning. It actually triggers our lyrics on the slides as well. That's something I've started doing, where I've been able to automate. When you know, if you've gone to a modern church where instead of, you know, singing out a hymnal, you're singing to words up on a screen, sometimes those slides aren't always on time, or sometimes it's not the right words up there and can cause some confusion. But now I have a software that actually triggers each one of those slides so they're there on time with the right stuff, and it's pretty crazy.
Speaking of your experience with training. You just talked about some software, and thank you so much for providing us with those names. We have many students interested in taking it in a number of directions. Should sound familiar to a major like this, without overselling the field. But a similar question I want to link in comes from student Megan, and she asks, let's see, what, and anything you've already covered, we totally understand here.
Sure.
But what, the first part of the question was, what training and or educational background do you have? And then the follow-up to that is, what direction would you point someone in terms of training and education who feels called to similar areas of service within a church?
Sure. I don't have a ton of formal training in any of this kind of stuff. I've been kind of a self-learner my entire life. I didn't grow, like I play guitar. That's the main instrument I play. But I had maybe a handful of formal lessons, and growing up in the 90s, the internet wasn't really a thing when I started playing guitar. And so I would go to the grocery store and buy guitar magazines and learn how to play the songs I wanted to play. Fast forward a few years later, you have America Online, which was awesome. And then I could actually go on the internet and look for the songs that I wanted to learn how to play. And you fast forward a few years later, now YouTube, there are people out there that literally learn songs, post tutorial videos like, hey, if you want to play this song, this is how you play it. And you can learn anything you want on YouTube. I carried that over. So, I mean, I've been a lifelong self-teacher through music. The past 2 to 3 years, I've kind of carried that over through playing keys and playing piano, where, 5 years ago, it wasn't something I was super comfortable with. And now there are many Sundays where I will lead songs from the piano, and it's just stuff that I've learned from other people, but mainly online resources. Back when I was heavily involved in the media process, as far as creating graphics and creating video stuff, I would just seek out people who were awesome at it. And one of the resources I found, there was a company called Pro Church Tools. This guy named Brady would run a podcast every single week, and he had a website where he was like, hey, here's 7 easy ways to make a cool graphic design for your church. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I can follow these steps. Or, hey, this is 5 ways to make your video better. So it was just seeking out online resources. And even today, there are so many online companies that are teaching people how to do things that they don't know how to do. And so if you have some tools, if you have the right tools as far as computer or whatever you need to gain access to this stuff, you can learn a lot of things. There's a company right now called Worship Online, and it's super cool. Every single week they will post tutorial videos for modern worship songs on like how to sing all of the parts, how to sing the lead part, how to sing the harmony part, how to sing any backing vocals, how to play the bass part, how to play the electric guitar, drums, keys, so on and so on. And so I can send my team to that website and say, hey, there's a really specific part that, if you're not really playing it, the song's not going to translate how it should. Go to this website and this person can teach you how to play it. So in 2018, you can learn so many things. Like if you've got the hunger and the patience to do it, I mean, online tools are amazing. I don't have much formal education, and kind of I love my communication background, and I love that part of me really loves that I didn't go and get a Bible degree, not to poo-poo on Bible degrees or anything like that, because everybody has something specific that they know they need to do. But for me, the communication degree, that allows me to be a chameleon into so many other industries. It's what, if ministry were to be over for me, tomorrow, I could take what I've learned in the comm field and make it translate how I need it to,
Mm-hmm. This, speaking about some of the challenges. One of the through lines I feel like we're exploring here through various conditions and not only through your words, but in my opinion, my assessment and my impression has always been that you're a very work ethic driven person, and so it is difficult. On one hand, we often want to, need to, must, and are proud to tout the communication field and everything it provides us to potentially succeed. But one of those essential takeaways is that the degree can sometimes be what we make of it and how much we apply ourselves, not just within the context of, okay, within this assignment in this class, but how do we lift that? How do we develop training and rigor and then go out and practice that in professional settings, right? Whether it be through, learning new tools and taking on new responsibilities. Kimberly had some questions relating to your ministry experience. She asked, what steps did you take when you realized a calling in ministry to engage with that calling? So maybe it's a question about some of the background, some of the chronological steps maybe that helped you sort of evolve into a worship pastor, and then what were some of the biggest challenges in specifically the church planning process?
Sure. So kind of how I got where I'm at today, and advice I would give somebody is, once I knew I was called to ministry towards the end of high school, right before college. I didn't know any kind of specifics. I didn't know what that looked like. I just knew what I was doing at the time. And so I talked to people from all different kinds of backgrounds. I went and talked to worship pastors that I respected and kind of got their advice. Hey, I'm 18 years old. What would be some great steps for me to take over the next 4 years? Talk to other youth pastors. Hey, I'm a youth right now. I'm in youth ministry. What would be some advice you would give me? So I tried to seek out a broad spectrum of advice. That way I wouldn't kind of pigeonhole myself, because I didn't know what the next 4 years, the next 10 years looked like. And then I just tried several things, and the biggest thing is I was already doing music. So I just kind of kept doing it. And there was a summer where I said, hey, I really like music and I feel like I'm good at it. And I feel like there's a future here, but I just want to test the waters on some other things and maybe take a step back from music for a couple months and see what that looks like. And I did that, and I tried some other things and saw some success in some stuff. But I realized, like, hey, for now, I know this is what I'm supposed to do. Like, it was not so much that I didn't enjoy what I was doing, that I just hated missing out on being a part of music and doing that. And so, and again, I know it's not a forever type of thing for me. I joke around with my wife all the time that, I'm 34 right now, and when I turn 40, I'm going to turn into a cowboy and call this music thing quits, because I'm not going to be cool. And so I'm still trying to learn and take in new things. But yeah, just spread out as much as you can and learn as many things as you can and see what sticks, And so that's kind of where I got. What was the second part of the question about church planning?
I may have closed out the question.
That's all right.
You mentioned the 5-year gap, not 5-year gap, but you just now made a comment about, pivoting to some sort of alternative cowboy lifestyle
Sure.
at 40. It's funny, John, one of our students out in Indiana, asked a question about, how did he wear them? I've got the wrong questions here. John had asked, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Do you have any sort of long-term goals? As maybe a way we could just preface that. No pressure.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's something.
Like that, and then John has another great question I want to get to.
It's something I thought about a lot, and I want to play music as long as I can, and as long is what I'm doing is connecting with people. And as long as I feel like I can stay relevant, I'll keep doing it. I make that joke that, you know, come 5 or 6 years when I hit 40, that I'm not going to be relevant anymore. And I've had some of my good friends kind of almost rebut that before. And they're like, whatever, man, like you're the guy that can be doing that when they're 40, 45. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll see. But one of the moves that kind of made sense for me in coming to the church that I'm at and organizationally, it's so multi-layered and multifaceted. I don't ever see myself being the senior pastor or the senior leader of a church or preaching from week to week, but I've grown up in church. My mom works at a church. She's worked there for 25 years. And so I know how the organizations can work, and I know what healthy churches look like, and I know what unhealthy churches look like. And I feel like there are a lot of different roles and different hats that I can play that might not involve music, whether it be leading the creative aspect where I'm coaching up younger people, coaching up younger worship leaders, coaching up younger creatives, or leading a campus organization. That's some stuff that I can be passionate about, because I am passionate about sharing the knowledge that I have and empowering other people to help them do that. And, you know, the church is a great place for that. And I feel like I've messed things up so many times and seen things done wrong that I can help people avoid the pitfalls that I've had.
Here's a buzzword I am hearing based on your description of these qualities. And this is combining something quite popular in communication, but now to innovate it along the path you described, worship consultant.
Yeah.
Ministry consultant. Ministry consultant firm. Right, Jameson Reynolds LLC. You can be the president. That's John had a question about, we're talking about how it sounds like your passion is to never necessarily be doing the same thing so routinized, but to be able to be a multitasker that's giving in multiple directions. We haven't talked a lot about your, we'll call it a sort of artistic career as a musician. John asks, what is your favorite place or setting when writing or composing songs or music?
Sure. I mean, that's not something I honestly, I've created this little room that I'm in right now. That's kind of our fourth bedroom in our house that I've been able to just create a place. When we built this house, I was like, all right, Ashley, you can have the entire house. Just like, give me this space and let me make it look like I want to look. Let me make it feel like I want to feel. You can see I got guitars hanging on the walls and over here. Mm-hmm. But it's really, to me, when I'm creating and when I'm writing, I need to have all the tools at my hand to where I can do something quickly. One of the biggest things is if you have an idea and it takes too long to get it from here, onto the computer or here, wherever it is. If that gets messed up, then it kind of just kills the whole creative process and the creative vibe. And so I can come in here and I could start recording a song in 5 minutes and I could have something done by the end of the day, or I could bring a friend in. Like I've had multiple people. I've had friends that are musicians for a living. They do projects, and I've had a buddy that says, hey man, I've got a guy from back east calling. He needs me to lay some guitar. Can I come into your studio and play some guitar? I'll have him come in, set in. I can set up the files and get him going, and we can knock something out in a couple of hours. And so I'm not necessarily like, hey, go to a cabin or go to a place and write. Like this I can just create here. And it's one of those things you find a rhythm, and wherever you find your rhythm, just stick with it.
Get into the flow.
Yeah.
I like that. Now, with this, to pull back the strings of time a little bit, we teased that previous album you released entitled "You Are." You, to my recollection, didn't live in your current house when you were putting that album together. Can you talk to us just? It doesn't have to be very formal, but about what were the steps like? What are the steps of putting an album together and And, what are some highlights that you would care to share with us about that process?
Sure. Yeah, I actually did. We didn't live here yet. 2000, gosh, I think it was like 2014 when I made that. But man, for the past 10 to 15 years, the music industry's been flipping upside on its head, and the conventional studio is, if you want to pay a lot of money and you don't have the resources or the know-how, you can do that and you can get some stuff that sounds awesome, no doubt. But if you have resources and you have talent and ability and patience, you can come up with some pretty great things. And so honestly, at my last house, I had a very similar type of thing, but without this fourth bedroom. I set up, my iMac and my desk in our bedroom, and we recorded the drums at a friend's house in his kind of little music area. I took the computer over there, took all my gear that I needed to record that, sat at my desk, recorded all the guitar stuff, all the keyboard stuff, the vocal stuff in the room, and just tried to get creative with what I had. Like I said, in where stuff is now and the ability and the resources we have, you can be creative really anywhere you want to be, because so much of that creativity, it just comes back to the person and what they're able to put onto the computer or put onto the music. Talent can speak in any kind of medium. So yeah, it was pretty grassroots.
John, speaking about John, one of our students again, excellent, what do you call it, research and rigor on his part this week. John writes, I took a peek at the website Reverb Nation and listened to one of your songs. Did the UR album meet your expectations? And do you have any future plans for more albums someday?
Yeah, I think it, as a musician, it's always a struggle. Like you're your own worst critic. So there are parts of it where I'm like, yeah, like when I big picture look back at it, I'm like, dang, I'm pretty proud of that. Like for what I had available and the time frame I was working with, because one thing I did when I created that is I set some pretty rigorous time goals for myself, because I thought, here's the deal. If I leave this too open-ended, I'm never going to finish it. And so I remember, putting out an Excel spreadsheet, like, I'm going to finish the drums by then. I'm going to finish guitars then. I'm going to finish vocals here. I'm going to have it mixed by then. I'm going to send it off for mastering by then. And I'm just going to have to be okay with where it's at. And as a musician, you can just tinker with stuff forever and tinker and tinker and tinker and never truly be happy with where stuff is. So big picture, yeah, I'm pretty pleased. Is there stuff that I would go back and change if I were to do it all over? Sure. But I feel like that's pretty much always the case creatively. When you're creating, you're learning. So it was all right.
There were some other students have other questions. And one of them, we've talked about music, we've talked about church planning, we've talked about studio work. And Ezel asks that, well, he knows you do many things in the ministry. And his question is this a passion for you, or is it just a job, right?
Oh, man. So, man, just 100% honest, there are days where you're not running on passion. And there are days where you have to get stuff done because you're an adult and you have kids and you have a wife and you have responsibilities, and you just have to push through and power through. You can't always run on passion. Mm-hmm. I think that's probably a misconception that's out there, that, just find what you want to do and then you can work every day and it's like it's bonus that you're getting paid. Well, yeah, that's true. But some days life is just hard and stuff can suck. Mm-hmm. And people can be jerks. Mm-hmm. But no, it's definitely a passion of mine. Working in ministry, backing up to part of my story, we moved to Tulsa in 2010 to help plan a church. And when I was working at the studio, I was making about twice what I was when I decided to move to Tulsa and be a part of a church plant. And you don't do that because you're not passionate. Like, if it was about money, I just would have stayed where I was at, but I was passionate and I knew that's where I needed to be. And I knew that not that I didn't love the studio environment, but I knew that wasn't the long-term thing for me. And so I was willing to forego some financial things in the short term, knowing that stuff will probably all work itself out in the end financially. But I'm going to be much happier doing what I love. And there are definitely, there are some days where I'll get a project or I'll get an idea and I'll be like so fired up about it. It's all I can think about. And it's all I can talk about. And again, like you talked about earlier, the passion is huge. When there's a song or an idea or something we've created, if I'm super passionate about it, it comes across, and people can tell, and people can also tell when I'm not. You know.
Mm-hmm. We've had a lot of discussion, and it has been steered. We try to allow our multi-reading strategy to steer certain discussions for us in the courses in strategic directions to have important conversations. And once again, that the uprising text from Goodson talking about sparking a cultural movement requires passion. This question, a kind of sub discussion emerged in our forum space about whether or not a person can fake passion. And we're all over the map here, to be clear. People felt like, if necessary, yes, or of course you can. And then some people were very restrictive and said, oh, absolutely not. A person cannot do that. We won't necessarily hold the coals to your feet, but it was a question that continues to find currency as the weeks go by. So we do appreciate students inquiring about passion. And I think you articulate it in a wise way to say, it's not that you're necessarily faking it. It's that sometimes you simply cannot sustain it all the time. I think that's a great response to that.
Yeah, I think there's a total parallel and an idea that I can pull from that. So like I said, we're a multi-site organization. So there are 6 different churches across the Tulsa area, and our senior pastor preaches from our central location. The other locations live stream those messages. And so as far as worship goes, we all tend to pull from a familiar song bank, to where if you were to go to the church at South Tulsa or the church at Battle Creek or Midtown, you might not hear all the exact same songs that day, but there is a similar thread. Well, there are times where our senior pastor is like, hey, coming out of this message, I want every single campus, I want us to be singing this song right here. And there are times where you're like, yeah, man, I'm all about that. I love that song and I connect with that song. And I think our campus is going to connect with that song. And there are times you're like, man, I've played that song into the ground and my passion for that is waning. Or like, man, I can't believe we're going to sing that song like that. That's so lame. And so like, it doesn't, creatively speak to me. And you have to be in that place. I don't think you have to fake it, but I think you have to find some way to connect with what you're doing. You got to be able to make that connection.
Mm-hmm. This story you tell reminds me of that feedback process of, not just, we've had conversations about the need to quote unquote pay your dues, but more importantly, compromise. That other people, more often than not, their role is to help improve the quality of your ideas, not disrupt your ability to create and put out excellent work. We simulate this in the classroom through the feedback instructors give students. But in the real world, this can be a tension for novices entering areas like advertising, marketing, maybe even something narrow like public relations, or even social media management. Is students need to be ready to be sort of put in check, as young professionals, and learn and grow from that experience, right? Develop patience, but develop over time confidence, right? Of how to manage the expectations and feedback that we receive.
Yeah, that's been a huge learning thing for me. And something I've tried to tell myself over the past few years is when I have a creative idea, or like, when I'm creating a song list for Sunday, because that is part of my primary responsibility is me to come up with the song list for our specific campus, is as I say, okay, how can I hold my creative ideas with an open hand rather than a clenched fist? And how can I always say, hey, I don't always know everything, and I don't. Someone else has walked in some experience that I don't have, or is coming from a different area, or has a different perspective. And how can I, because I think creatively, especially for creatives, and especially when it's something you're super passionate about, your knee-jerk reaction is like, no, you're wrong. You're wrong, and I'm not listening to that idea. Like, just because you're so passionate and it's yours, and you've invested your time, and who are you to come in who you haven't invested any time in this? You don't know what this process looks like. But someone could very easily be pointing out a blind spot that you're just not seeing. Mm-hmm. And that was something I struggled with that early on. When I was 22 years old, like, don't tell me what to sing. I know what I'm talking about. I got this figured out. And so I remember when I started at my current church, I said, I remember I literally sang this out loud on my first day driving in, is I want to be teachable. How can I be teachable today? Don't ever be at the place where I've got it figured out. Don't be the person that's going to be a stick in the mud. How can I be teachable today? And part of that is just, you also got to learn how to respond to authority. Sometimes somebody might have an idea that's above you, and they might be speaking something into your creativity that you know is wrong. But sometimes you just got to, okay, we can do that. I'm going to respectfully voice my opinion, but because you're my boss, and even more for me, because you're my pastor, I'm going to trust where you're leading us. And it might fail, or it might just totally blow me away, and I was wrong. So that's another learning aspect, is just learning how to say, okay.
Excellent. And I've got just a couple more questions from our students before we sort of wind down and wrap things up. But Megan, while we are talking about this subject of negotiations and communication, and I've mentioned marketing, marketing would play a role on some level, while not necessarily a financial level, a social level, an immediate level, a branding level, with something like church planting. And Megan asks the question, when planting a church, is there a lot of marketing that goes into spreading the word and getting people through the doors? And could you articulate any processes of feeling uncomfortable with the amount of quote unquote selling that goes involved, or that's involved with church plants? I think this is getting at an interesting conversation point, and that would be, this area of that fine line between churches have a valuable service to offer, but sometimes, the outside of the general public, it gets skewed by some strong, large, notorious public examples in ministry. But can you talk about maybe some of what that marketing process feels like on the other side, and if there are any things, maybe it's even a question of if you could do something different, how would you do it?
Sure. No, that's a great question. So if you are starting, I don't know how you could plant a church and not do some sort of marketing. I don't know how it could, I'm not saying it couldn't succeed, but there is this train of thought, and there's people that's saying, well, we're going to start a church, and all we're going to do is we're going to preach the Bible, and we don't need any of that stuff, and God's going to do his thing. Not saying that can't totally work, because the way I believe is God is the creator of everything. He can do what he wants. But I also believe that he wants us to be people. He didn't want us to be lazy. He wants us to work hard. And I think God rewards hard work. And so when I helped plant the church that I was at, I mean, we were super, super intentional. I think that's the key word, is you have to be intentional on everything you do. We were intentional about our Facebook posts. We were intentional about what we were saying. We were intentional about when we were saying it. When we're posting, when are people going to interact with this? Like, we're not going to post something at some random time where it's just going to get missed, because then it's just content that's out there that's kind of, you know, just making noise but not getting any kind of return. I think the best things that a church can do as far as marketing is you have to tell a story. You know, people were natural storytellers. We're a culture of storytellers. People want to hear a good story. I'm not saying fabricate a story, but tell the story of the church, tell the story of Jesus, tell the story that people need to hear. And I think that's the thing that you have to remember is, as a church, I believe that I have one of the most important jobs on the planet of telling the redemptive story of Jesus Christ. And I better be telling that, and I better be using every method and medium possible. And I think, I mean, I've seen it, you know, I follow tons of churches and tons of leaders on social media, and there are times where it does kind of feel like, are you telling a story? Or are you just showing some stuff where you look really cool? Because you do. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that looks really cool what you did right there. But like, what are you saying right there? And so I think there is a fine line. I don't ever like the self-promotion of, hey, just look how cool we are and look at the good stuff we're doing. Rather, this is the story, and we'd love for you to come be a part of this. We'd love for you to be a part of life change. That's kind of where I fall in that. Excellent.
Thank you so much for sharing. I thought it was an important question to be able to engage at some level. You have talked a lot already, I know, about the various teams and all of the multitasking that goes on in your current and previous roles. But Michael asks, what were some of the ministry teams you were a part of? If we haven't touched on anything there, if we have, you know, correct me. And then how did they change or influence your life?
I mean, I tell people all the time, my experience in ministry is I am the jack of all trades and the master of none. Like, I can do a lot of things pretty good, but I'm not that one guy that's like, oh man, if you need somebody to do this one thing, he's the one you go to because he's just way better than everybody, you know? And so I've just tried to learn to be good at all sorts of things. Like, okay, like technical stuff, whether it's programming lights on a Sunday morning, like I've learned how to do that pretty good. I'm not the guy you call to like create the best light show ever, but I can do it. And I can definitely help you out if you're in a jam. But as far as, you know, ministry experience, that's just part of the nature of it is, you know, every Monday morning I sit in on a staff meeting where we will talk about a Sunday morning experience, and we'll talk about student ministry experience, elementaries, preschool, and what that looks like for everyone. So you just naturally have to learn to, what have you learned in your specific team, and how can you translate that to another team?
Let's see here. I was trying to return to our initial question from Erin, and you had read one of her questions, and it seemed like there was a second one that drew your attention. Do you recall which one that is? And
yeah, she had asked about, you know, what role did communication play in first planning the church, and how did that help or hurt and all that kind of stuff. And so we planted South Community Church here in Tulsa in 2010. And one of the things, this was a really interesting time in social media, and especially Facebook. And one of the things we really leveraged at that time were Facebook videos from our Facebook page. And at that time, the algorithm that Facebook was using, Facebook loved our Facebook videos that we were posting and loved the YouTube videos. And so we really leveraged that, and were able to gain a massive following very quickly, and people were able to share things And, a lot of these social networking companies like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, they're constantly changing their algorithms. And honestly, right now in 2018, if we were to probably try to reproduce that and start that all over, it probably wouldn't work the same. So really, we were just kind of lucky with the timing of how things worked out. And that's true of a lot of successful organizations. Like, you do the best you can do, and sometimes you're just lucky. And so Facebook was really, really instrumental in our promotion. There was a ton of grassroots stuff we did. When we first started, we did a couple of just community outreach events where we provided, like on Halloween for 2 years, we provided just kind of a carnival atmosphere where we went out, and me and the senior pastor, we just knocked on doors of businesses and said, hey, we're a brand new church. We're starting a carnival. It's going to be at this massive event center. Would you want to come set up a booth? You can help promote your company. And so it was a lot of just grassroots, door to door, talking to people. We definitely did some print piece and some direct mailers. And I think that can be okay with spreading your name. I don't know just a ton of fruit we saw from that. But one thing I did remember when I was working at South Community Church, and I still do all the time, when I would meet new people, I would always ask them, like, hey, how did you hear about us? What was that thing? And it typically came down to 3 different things. It was most of the time it was, we've got a really good friend here that invited us. And it's like, okay, of course, that makes sense. That always wins. Another thing was like, yeah, we live right by, and we saw your banners. And that church, we were super intentional about roadside banners, flags. So when you drove by, we met at an elementary school for 2 years. You couldn't drive there on a Saturday and not know what was happening on Sunday. And so it kind of piqued people's interest. Like, wait, there's a church meeting there in this school on a Sunday? Okay, I've got to check this out. So it was either, a friend invited us. We just live right over here, and you guys are right here, and we saw your banners. Or it was like, yeah, somebody shared one of your videos on social media, and I went to your website. And the way we built the website, and the way a lot of churches, and especially successful churches, build their websites now, is you can basically experience church before you ever get there. You can see who the pastors are. You can watch a message. You can see what the core values are. You could even see what the worship music's going to be like. And then at the very end, you can say, hey, we want to plan our visit. We're going to be here this Sunday, and we got so many kids, and these are our names. And so we would get these emails. We're like, hey, be on the lookout for so-and-so. We have a family that told us they're actually coming. And so we would just be real intentional with our website where, like I said, most churches that are doing websites really well now, you can experience the place before you ever set foot there.
That is excellent. And this combination of, we knew about this, some social media campaigns, some media productions, the live events, though also you mentioned, flyers and, door hanger things, and grassroots campaigns led, by the core people, not like we need a bundle of random volunteers, but led by the leaders, is excellent, and an extremely topical tie-in to a different lead text that we have not only in this course, but in our communication media and ethics major. We look at Henry Jenkins, Sam Ford, and Joshua Green's Spreadable Media. And they just came out with a new updated version that I saw recently at a conference that eventually will integrate. But that their motto for that book and for the contemporary idea leader and a marketer is, if it doesn't spread, it's dead. And you can't rely on, just as you said, one single medium with which to share your message. You have to be able to and ready to spread it across multiple media platforms, just like we are doing today. Jameson, thank you so much for joining us. It has been fantastic to gain experiences and insights from your life, right? From the trials and successes that you have encountered. On a personal level, it means a lot to be able to share that with our students, to pass the baton of encouragement as looked at as a fellow communication degree holder. That's something we value and want to champion as we go through here. But in a kind of closing commentary, are there any additional aspects of your work you'd like to pass along, or can people, I don't know, follow you or contact you, or is there any information, any social media or otherwise you would care to pass along to further the brand, or just kind of extend the olive branch as we close things out here?
Yeah, man, dude, thank you so much for having me. Like I said, I'm passionate about helping people and teaching people, because I wouldn't be where I'm at today without the help and advice and leadership of tons of people that can do what I do way better than me. And so I love helping people. You can find me on the socials, Jameson Reynolds on Twitter and Instagram. I'm semi-active there, probably Instagram more than anything. And you'll get you'll basically get 3 streams. You will get my church social media stream, you will get my kids stream, and then you will either get me like working out or showing my new shoes. So if you like those, you'll get that stuff. Twitter is a place I post a lot of church. It's either church or sports. Those are my 2 streams on there. If anybody has any questions, they could definitely reach out by email, Jameson.Reynolds@gmail. I'd love to help out in any way I can. And then our church, the church app does social media really, really well. And I feel like we've cranked it up a notch in the past 5 or 6 months. You can find us on Facebook if you just search the church at Battle Creek. On Instagram, the church at, like I said, just the church, and then at. And our Instagram, our people do really, really well with that, and I'm really proud of the stuff they do. I'm not responsible for any of that. I just get to talk about how great they are. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you once again. It has been fantastic. And just as a closing word to our students, this has been an ultra successful experience as we work through the newly updated COM 4603 template for creating social media presence and cultural movements. I feel like we are together, collectively, we are creating social media presence. It's exciting to be a part of that with MacU and to help ready our students, adjust our expectations, and gear you up for what those real world settings and situations will be like. And it has been phenomenal to bring in contemporary working professionals and hear that invaluable feedback. Okay, that type of word of mouth testimonial is just excellent in setting our expectations as elite as any assignment we can simulate, and we do plenty of those along the way as well. For as a kind of closing word, we are at the end of the course. So it has been a terrific time moderating this experience for us. And as the statistics suggest, the old YouTube data, this video series has been one of our most popular experiments in the new communication, media, and ethics degree at Mid-America Christian University. So, Dr. Casper, signing off for our series, but we'll be back the next time this course runs for fresh students and fresh perspectives. And as always, you can click and subscribe for more original content of the scholarly and fodderly. Don't word check me on that spelling. But anyway, I appreciate it, and thank you all for being diligent and tuning in each week. Thank you. All right, man.
Dude, super